And we're recording. And Dave, go ahead. Get started.
Terrific. Just let a few participants get into the webinar and we'll kick this off. This is RunSafe's third webinar of our bashes for CyberWeek. This is Wednesday's bash, which is going to focus on DevSecOps, particularly in the federal environment, and with a particular focus on security. Again, just letting people get assembled. All right, looking good. So our panelists today, we've got Joe McKairns from Gitlab. We've got Andi Patel working to join from Jasper. And maybe you're on, Andi.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm here.
Oh, fantastic. And we've got myself, Dave Salwen from RunSafe. And again, we're going to explore DevSecOps in the federal context with an emphasis on security. We all want this webinar to be meaningful for everyone. So our goal is really for it to be both interactive and entertaining, sort of in the spirit of DevSecOps. It's a collaborative enterprise, so really look forward to comments, questions, criticisms of anything you hear. This session is being recorded. When you are inspired to participate, you can do it via the Q&A function by text, or you can raise your digital hand, and we're happy to give you the mic and have you participate by voice. If you want to post about this, obviously RunSafe Security, Gitlab, Jasper Solutions are good tags, as well as the hashtag CyberWeek. And so last slide before we go into the panel discussion, just to give folks context first on RunSafe, for you, as in a DevSecOps environment, you're trying to move fast, you're trying to collaborate across developers and operators, and you're trying to embed security to increase the DoD's cybersecurity posture, which is absolutely needed given the threats out there. RunSafe is a tool that fits into that DevSecOps chain to immunize software as it's moving through your chain, and also to immunize other tools potentially in your chain. So that's where RunSafe fits in. And I'm going to stop the screen share and look to one of my panelists, Joe McKairns, to again set the stage about Gitlab, which I think most of us would know. But also, Joe, for you to give your perspective as an end-to-end tool supplier for CI/CD pipeline, give your perspective on how you define DevSecOps today, and even how you see it changing.
Certainly, thank you for that, Dave. Yeah, so if we looked at DevSecOps or DevOps historically, the problem it's trying to solve is really collaboration. It's trying to get all the constituents involved into the same room, if you will, to make sure that what we're doing is right, to make sure we can do it quickly, make sure we can do it securely. And, in years ago, it was usually developers on one side of the fence and security officers on the other side of the fence, and a lot of finger pointing about who's doing what wrong. And DevSecOps really breaks that wall, those walls down. So here at Gitlab, we believe in kind of three main areas of focus. One is you have to know what's going on in your development shop. You have to have real-time information. Meeting at a table on a Monday morning to find out what went wrong last week just doesn't cut it in today's fast-paced world. Which brings me to the second point, which is speed to mission. We're dealing with airframes and missile systems here in the DoD, and if there's a threat or a vulnerability, that's got to get resolved very, very quickly. We're trying to get the time frame down. You might have seen the latest news on the U2 where they're actually pushing code to the plane while it's flying. We're trying to get that time frame down to about two to 4 hours for the pilot to say something's wrong and us to go ahead and get that coding fixed. So speed to mission is absolutely important. And last and far from least is the security of that. As we just talked about, we can't have vulnerabilities being pushed out that can be exploited, because there's a lot of baddies out there looking to do that. So GitLab really is a single product, and that's what gives you that speed to mission. You're not trying to cobble together a bunch of different products. That takes you from the left side, if you will, with requirements management, all the way through the security scanning and leveraging partners like yourself, through deploying out to the end state in a secure and quick fashion. Thank you.
Oh, really nice, Joe. Again, hitting on that collaboration and awareness across the team, and then speed and security, which, as we'll talk about, are not always aligned, sometimes are working against each other. Hey, Andi Patel from Jasper, you help a lot of DoD customers transition to a DevSecOps environment. So give the floor to you to really comment on what you see as really helping your customers move to DevSecOps, and any barriers.
Yeah, so thank you again. So primarily, speed to mission is the #1 priority, right, for warfighters, sailors, airmen, and soldiers. So getting things out there primarily to support, either it's on-prem, cloud, or at tactical edge, or disconnected environments, primarily to support the AI, ML, and cyber code development, as well as your traditional applications. But more importantly, also the security aspect, as Joe identified and highlighted. That is one of the continuous ATO, and accreditation is a key aspect as well. And then really the last area, right, is making the things easier for the developers to really understand the pipeline and how the flow through the CI, CD, and CM process actually works, and how we actually secure it to actually deploy it, regardless of, if you are using VMware containers or, any of the other deployment strategies from platform perspective. So that's primarily what we focus on with DevSecOps.
That's terrific, Andi. And again, bringing up speed and security, and from your perspective as a service provider, bringing up the importance of a team understanding their pipeline. Obviously, at a certain point, the pipeline should become somewhat transparent, but that understanding is key. With that, just kind of to start the engagement of everyone, Jeff, if you could launch our first poll. It's a straightforward poll, just to get a sense of who's on the webinar, and start to tailor some of the discussion based on the poll results, but also based on your questions and comments.
Okay, launching the poll now.
Just give folks a few minutes to click in. Or not. Of course, it's a voluntary poll.
Give everybody a couple more seconds to think about their answers. It seems to be everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and then share the results. So there you go, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So a good mix, about 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 in my rounding off of starting the journey versus being on the journey, having established the CI/CD pipeline, and then a third providing tools to the ecosystem, which I think includes some of Joe and my colleagues who might be listening in to weight it towards that. So that's interesting. Maybe there's a question in there for you, Andi, as Jasper has helped a lot of DoD programs shift into the DevSecOps. What is one of the catalysts or one of the initial barriers that teams starting the DevOps journey faced?
So the most important thing that I can actually highlight is primarily getting the developers familiar with the tools that they will actually utilize, right, as well as the platform that they'll be deploying on. And again, right, one of the key aspects of GitLab and RunSafe is actually making security posture a primarily integrated part of the platform and pipeline deployment, as well as GitLab provides a single pipeline and a tool that addresses to all 10 areas of CI/CD/CM, right? So if I had to start, it's primarily getting the developers used to the idea of using a single platform and a single pipeline that they can address the CI/CD/CM and primarily develop and focus on development and making the code, and then primarily pushing the code, right, with security already addressed within the pipeline as well as the platform and pushing it out.
Excellent. Thanks, Andy. And again, a reminder or an invitation, folks in the audience who have comments, questions, different points of view, please let us know about those. But now, what I think is a fun new thing, part of a webinar for me. All of you probably are aware of Platform One, and one of the main instigators behind Platform One, Nicolas Chaillan, the Chief Software Officer of the Air Force. What you may also know about Nicolas is he's an avid chess player, a competitive chess player. So we're going to launch a 2-minute chess game that we pre-recorded, where Nicolas is playing chess against my CEO, Joe Saunders. We knew Nicolas was very good, so I asked him a question about Platform One during this match. Unfortunately, it doesn't help Joe Saunders very much, but it's just interesting. Nicolas playing chess is pretty much like Nicolas giving a talk about DevSecOps. Nicolas is white in this match. Yeah, go ahead, Kenton, and launch that. Our chess match is ready to begin.
It works. Where's the question?
And Nicolas, your question for this match is, Platform One has had great success. What are Platform One successes you're working towards in fiscal year 21?
Well, first we want to scale what we're doing. So we're really trying to build more and more momentum. And I can tell you, doing this at the scale of DoD is obviously not easy. At the same time, I'm playing chess, answering your question, which is fun. So yeah, that's kind of my answer. It's scale and really making sure that we can move better, faster together. That was my answer.
That wasn't bad.
That wasn't bad, no? Still gonna win chess.
Oh my God. He's good.
Gosh, you're slow.
What happened there? Oh.
Oof.
Oh God.
That should be illegal. That should really be illegal.
You're killing me. I can't believe it. Oh God. I'm gonna run out of time.
You're cheating. You make me laugh.
Oh God. Oh, white one.
I think white is me. Did I just win?
Yes.
I think I got your queen too, so I think that's like
oh God.
plus 20. Yeah, so that's hurts.
Oh my God.
End of
So
match.
Rematch.
Nicolas wins. So I hope that was amusing and a little informative. Too bad, Andy, that you couldn't see it, the screen, because I know you're a chess player. My takeaway was, obviously Nicholas won, but two, in answer to the question, and it was kind of brief because that was the first one where he had to answer while playing chess. He talked about scaling, and clearly that's not an issue when you're starting the journey, but as you're really, as the DoD is trying to bring on tens and then hundreds and then thousands of DevSecOps pipelines, that becomes super important. And so maybe Andy, over to you as you as Jasper Solutions has gone from, helping one project and then helping multiple projects. You talked about as an individual project, understanding that tool chain. What are you seeing, that's really important as you try to help the DoD scale up in their move to DevSecOps?
So the most recent project I can certainly talk about is
over to you,
primarily
Andy.
Army.
I think you're there.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Hear you.
Okay, is it better now?
Yep, it's good. You're good, Andy.
Okay, so one of the projects I can talk about is primarily Army PEO EIS Defense Cyber Operations Pipeline, which was given a recent award for one of the most modernization projects within DevSecOps and within Army in last week, and primarily supporting roughly 3,000 developers and various different prototypes that are coming in and out of on quarterly basis to support the soldiers and some of the objectives that they're doing to meet the tactical edge deployments. And that's really where we actually deployed platform and pipeline for on-premise, primarily to support various different sites and actually primarily give developers and soldiers the ability to actually code on day in, day out. And we completed that project in 60 days. So again, it's focusing on, how and what the deployment strategies are, and regardless of if it's on-prem or in the cloud or at tactical edge, primarily building a pipeline that supports the requirement to meet the developer needs, but also the key mission set, and then primarily addressing the security aspect, because security plays a key role on how you actually do continuous ATO, as well as the accreditation, RMF process, if you are bringing over some of the old applications and actually refactoring or rebuilding them. And then at the end of the day, it's primarily, to some extent, even offering multi-cloud capability from deployment and how RunSafe actually addresses across various different aspects of platform deployment.
Wow. So 3,000 developers at PEO EIS. Going back to your comment of one of the first things is educating the developers on the tool chain. Did you hold training sessions, or how did you kind of enable that education to get them all going in 60 days?
Yeah, so we primarily did a parallel effort. One is primarily building and addressing to the infrastructure and the need to actually build the pipeline, and then in parallel primarily train and educate the developers on how to use the platform, what are some of the key things and key ingredients that they should consider, and then primarily getting them used to the platform. So again, they can use it on day in, day out. So on average, we've seen that anyone who actually touches GitLab, roughly between 7 to 14 days, it's a single pane of view, single pane of glass, that they can actually get familiar with the entire CI/CD/CM process. But most importantly, at the end of it, as to how to deploy platform and how RunSafe actually fits in within the pipeline and platform, we can also actually train them and show them as to how things are actually done in seamless fashion.
Oh, that's interesting, and I guess showing my age a little, talking about training sessions, kind of what you're describing is, and I'm going to go over to you, Joe, to expand on this. What you're describing, Andi, is letting the developers have access to GitLab, and they're going to come up to speed in 7 to 14 days. Wonder if you want to jump on that, Joe, and kind of with the broader community of GitLab users, what their experiences are and how they're coming up to speed.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dave. Yeah, so when I hear people ask questions like, "Well, tell me about scalability" or "Tell me about security," I kind of get a shiver because there's such vast terms, right? Security can mean so many things. Scalability can mean so many things. For me, first and foremost is partner experience when I think about scalability. If we're scaling, it's probably something that you may not have experience in. So having a partner like Jasper Solutions and Andi that can come in, has done it before, has implemented large scale systems, knows where the pitfalls are. To me, that's invaluable, and I wouldn't want to go down that journey without a good partner like that. Obviously scalability can mean infrastructure. I think that's probably more what Nick was referring to as he looks at platform one, getting more and more usage. So there he's talking about infrastructure, he's talking about server capacity and things of that nature. Certainly as we scale, that impacts people, both clients as well as internal employees. And as Andi pointed out, how do we get those developers up to speed? And to me, that's really where it starts coming down to the solutions that you pick need to be scalable. We might have the greatest DevSecOps tool in the world, but if it starts crashing after 100 users or 200 users, or just can't get the flows through, can't get me through that pipeline fast enough, that's a major problem. And well, here at GitLab, I mean, we're used to very, very large scale systems. So if we look at our requirements for install, it's actually quite minimal in order to support a large number of users. So that definitely adds value to scalability. So I think it comes down to those couple of areas: partner experience, tools, infrastructure, and people.
Yep, always people in the mix, and it's not. You're right. When you say speed and scalability, those are huge issues. But it's exciting that Platform One and GitLab and Jasper are having success. And as you both have kindly said, RunSafe's excited to be working with both of you, embedding security into the infrastructures you guys are building. I want to continue to encourage participants to ask any questions either by raising a hand or by posting a Q&A, and I guess I'm going to have to go to even more incentive. Spur of the moment, first question gets a RunSafe mug, and we'll start pouring out more swag. Maybe we can get that GitLab logo in the back of Joe's picture there. But Andi, did you have another comment to jump on?
Yeah, so primarily, right, we support Platform One and some of the initiatives that they are working on. We are also about to make as both of you guys are well aware of, and again, right, with the partnership of GitLab and RunSafe, we are about to offer a SaaS offering for public sector using GitLab pipeline, primarily for IL2 and IL4 and IL5 are being primarily sponsored by DoD. To actually get accreditation, but it's IL2, IL4, and IL5 pipeline, readily available to any public sector customers and government agencies, as well as anybody who's working and who has developing team that works with the government within GovCloud. And then primarily, right, the goal is to actually offer platform deployment come November to December timeframe. That aligns to the pipeline strategy and deployment as well. Again, with the same aspect, right? IL2, IL4, and IL5, and RunSafe is part of it.
Yeah. Again, sticking with scalability, Joe mentioned infrastructure and a software as a service is a really nice mechanism to be able to scale. You're adding in the GitLab and the RunSafe tools together with your experience helping teams get going. I mean, it's a nice offering in the scale domain. Still looking for a first question or comment from the audience, but kind of move from this intro section we did on DevSecOps and scaling. We've mentioned security and its relation, or sometimes its conflict with speed, but really gonna in this middle section focus on security even more in the DevSecOps context. You know, in our discussions, and Joe, you mentioned this a little, in our discussions with customers, often the quest for security can be adversarial with security folks pitted against DevOps folks, finger pointing starts with development folks. It can also, you know, a scanning result can bring the DevSecOps pipeline to a halt. I mean, Joe, you talked about 2 to 4 hours to get an operator a new capability. That's also, as you know, Navy's goal in their C2, C24 program, which we've both worked with. But those scanning results are a real I forget what Dolores Washburn calls it. I think she calls it, that's one of her snails. And so, you know, again, speaking from a RunSafe perspective, that's been a real motivator as we have attacked the problem of vulnerabilities in a non-manual, automated way. And you know, again, it's about the technology, it's about the people, and trying to make that culture of collaboration continue along with increased security. And you know, the final comment there, before I'll hand it over to you, Joe, is you know, your colleague Cindy Blake, when talking at an FC Innova seminar webinar, kind of echoed the concern that security can sometimes cause that cultural rift, and developers aren't feeling the ownership, but rather feeling the finger pointing. Yeah, so over to you, Joe, to kind of continue that thread.
Sure, thank you, Dave. Yeah, I think, you know, if we look back, like I said earlier, on the way development and security happened, you know, our developers spent a lot of time working on code, and they finally get to the point where they're ready to push it out to production, and the security folks step in and say, oh, hold on, you know, we found some vulnerabilities, you're gonna have to go back and fix these. So I think it's that lack of involvement, that lack of engagement that really put those walls up. And with DevSecOps, there's a couple things going on here that really resonate with collaboration today. And that is that we believe in this shift left mentality or philosophy. In other words, we don't want to wait till the software is ready to get deployed to start looking at security. We want to do it while the developers are in the code, while they're working on the code. That also gives the security folks the opportunity to be side by side with the developers as they're developing. So the shift left mentality or philosophy, if you will, we're going to scan for vulnerabilities as developers are working on code, as they're making commits back to their branches or to their repository. And then those vulnerabilities need to show up in context. In the old days, we just got a stack of reports that said, here's all the vulnerabilities we found. And, you know, again, that brought that adversarial aspect up, because they're just throwing the vulnerabilities over the fence. Developers have to go figure out where they are. If we bring those vulnerabilities up in context of the code and can point the developer and the security folks right to the software that's got the vulnerability, and go a step further, actually show them how to resolve it, and then empower them to make remediation decisions. That's really what's breaking down those barriers. It's also what's driving speed to mission, because we're not waiting to get that stack of reports and then go back and figure out where the code is. The developers have now moved out of context. They're working on some other project now. So that manual process, and that also does translate back to our scalability thing. The more we remove manual processes, scalability happens much quicker. And, you know, as you know, Dave, RunSafe is embraced in the GitLab architecture. Vulnerabilities can actually, that are found in the RunSafe suite, can be brought into the merge request along with other security scans, and embraced by the security folks to say, hey, we found these vulnerabilities, let's get them resolved.
Yeah, and just, I mean, there's still going to be the part of the pipeline where vulnerabilities are identified and resolved or scanning. But of course, with RunSafe, we've got an automated approach, which doesn't slow down the developer, but does mitigate that vulnerability through memory randomization. So definitely, supports the speed to mission with an automated approach, supports the culture by not presenting finger pointing and things. Not a panacea, not going to get rid of some of the scanning and vulnerability mitigation that has to happen manually, but taking a big chunk out of that. Hey, we've got a question that I'm going to pose probably to you, Joe, or to you, Andi, and it's very relevant to this integrating security into the pipeline. This question: is there a vision of integrating penetration testing into the CI/CD pipelines and DevSecOps?
Yeah, I'll take a swing at that first, and then Andi, if you'd like to add in, that'd be fantastic. So the first easy answer is yes. So GitLab's philosophy on security is security both at the development side and security at the runtime side. It's a new column that we've added to our suite of products, if you will, or new feature set that's very quickly expanding and being built out. We've also enhanced what I kind of consider penetration testing with fuzz testing. So we've introduced into the product line 2 new types of fuzz testing, one at the application level. So it's looking at APIs, looking at things like that. The other is it's actually running against your software, trying to do things that a user wouldn't normally do. And a great example of that is we had a client that was testing their user interface to make sure that user ID and passwords had to be right before somebody could get in. Leveraging our fuzz testing, the fuzz testing said, hey, wait a minute, what if somebody just puts in a user ID? And guess what? It worked. So they were able to get into the system by just putting user ID in. So these types of tests where we're thinking out of the box, if you will, we're gonna try and do things out of the norm, because quite honestly, that's what the baddies are going to do. They're going to try and figure out how to get into the system in non-normal ways that you probably already thought of securing. So yeah, pen testing is absolutely a piece of that. GitLab's a little bit early on that, but if you're familiar with GitLab, we iterate every month on new features and expand out. So it won't be long before we'll have those full capabilities.
Thanks, Joe. And Andi, anything to add there about pen testing integration into pipelines?
Yeah, so we work with various different OEM vendors, as well as we have our own pen testing software, at least for the DoD on the high side. So again, right, depending on the requirements, and if you're developing the code on the low side and moving it to the high side, right, there's various different options as to how you actually address pen testing. Versus you may be developing certain part of the code and certain aspects on the low side, and then again taking the code up to the high side, and then additionally attaching or actually developing additional code that addresses to the specific criteria to meet the development requirements. So yeah, there are various different ways to actually address the pen testing, and we do have our own software offering, as well as, right, as Joe said, with GitLab and the fuzzy testing that's coming up, and the integration. But again, one of the key aspects, right, is also that the API integration with GitLab and working with external parties and other vendors and integrating some of the software key aspects, those are some of the things that we actually work on and provide to the customers.
That's excellent, Andi, and thank you, Joe and Andi, for answering that question. Which again, Jessica, if that wasn't satisfactory, raise your hand or ask a clarifying question. But really, thanks for that question. Look forward to more questions and comments from folks on the call or on the webinar. So we've talked about security, embedding security, that tension sometimes between speed and security, the tension within culture. Jeff, if we could launch our second poll, this is going to be about security and what people are thinking just in terms of security and speed.
Okay, Dave, starting the poll right. Yeah.
Superman.
We'll give everybody at least 30 seconds to vote.
Sure.
People seem to have strong opinions on this one. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Put your votes in shortly, and ending the poll and sharing the results.
Right. So again, based on my bias and based on what C2, C24 has seen at the Navy, I mean, security is unfortunately a lot of the traditional approaches. While security is highly necessary, it is slowing it down, and that's just not good for speed to mission and not good for the culture within DevSecOps. Again, not all security approaches can be embedded and automated, but RunSafe, recognizing that DevSecOps culture has an automated solution, which will reduce a key attack surface in terms of memory corruption vulnerabilities. Any comments, Joe or Andy, about the poll results or otherwise, as we kind of wrap up this section on embedding security into a DevSecOps pipeline?
Yeah, I'm just jump in real fast. I have a colleague that uses an expression that I think is awesome as you're trying to look at addressing speed to mission. And he says, you're only as fast as your slowest tool. So keep in mind, the choices you make there are really what's going to affect you. And again, where you're doing the security scanning and why, definitely has an impact on that. I'd love to explore that a little bit more with some of the folks who answered, but we'll take that offline.
Well, or again, the Q&A function and the raise hand function are available throughout. So again, please join in as you wish. I think I can stop sharing the results, so I'm going to do that. But just one last question, kind of before we move on to part 3 in our of 3 parts. And maybe for you, Andy, what techniques, obviously automating security is a good technique. What other techniques have you seen projects you've supported use to reduce the friction between security and speed?
Primarily, right. One is primarily having the engineers as well as the customer and the group that's internal as well as external primarily get trained on understanding. RMF plays a key role across the Department of Defense, and a lot of people keep forgetting that we do have a lot of applications that while we address to DevSecOps and modernization, RMF plays a key role in having an integration with the security, and primarily building that security block for integration within the pipeline, as RunSafe does, but also from platform automation, is very much a key focus area, that at least every one of our customers that we have worked with, that we do try to highlight and primarily address, but also the new customers that are coming online. We primarily tend to focus on that area and at least educate them and then show them how it should be done using some of the industry's best practices.
That is a great point and very specific, to this DevSecOps federal discussion, which is RMF, Risk Management Framework. Platform 1 talks about continuous authority to operate, but again, there are still those slowdowns when vulnerabilities need to be addressed. And I think, as you're saying, Andy, you just got to embrace that RMF is part of the process, and use best practices, because there are a lot of pipelines out there cranking out applications for operators, and there's no need to invent the wheel again on that one, to use best practices from colleagues within the DoD. Yeah, really, or within FedCiv as well. Really, that's a really good point. Appreciate that. Again, would love to see, different perspectives or ads from the audience. But we're going to continue on to kind of part 3 of 3, really talking about open source in DevSecOps. Again, continues to, when you talk about open source, you continue to talk about security, because open source is coming with vulnerabilities, both known and unknown. And Nicolas, in this next chess match, this is chess match number 3, Nicolas talks about open source and its importance, its inevitability, but also its vulnerability. So we'll let another 2-minute chess match happen. Listen to Nicolas's answer and the chatter between Nicolas and Joe Saunders. Okay, our chess match is ready to begin.
I always do the same beginning, because it's too hard for this poor guy.
Okay, Nicolas, this is about open source. You said everyone uses open source software, whether we like to admit it or not. In other words, open source is here to stay. What are ways to protect open source IT infrastructure like Nginx, MySQL, and other core technologies that developers don't write themselves?
Well, I think there are multiple ways to look at the risk of open source. It's obviously not easy. People often misunderstand the impact of open source and how much open source they are using in their DevSecOps pipelines. And so for me, it's always been important to really get a right bit of material of what's included inside of your open source stack. But again, I'm also playing chess at the same time, so I'm not sure what I'm saying. So I guess the key piece is really to look at what are you doing?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Dependencies, and trying to make sure that you understand the dependencies of dependencies. That's often something that people misunderstand. We use tools like Black Duck, Nexus Lifecycle,
Cyber hardening.
And cyber hardening, of course, because of course Joe is trying to sell his stuff, so that makes sense. But he's still losing at chess, I have to say. That's sad.
I am getting amazing.
He lost again. I was gonna whoop your ass right there on the next move, but
yes, you were. This is embarrassing.
Did I answer the question? I don't even know.
Oh, I'm sorry. I find that amusing. I've seen it like 3 or 4 times now. So you see, Nicolas's chess is still as good in the first game. His answer got a lot more specific, despite trying to help Joe win by using the same opening moves. But again, maybe to you first, Joe. What do you think about Nicolas's answer, which had a bunch of content? He said people don't realize how much open source they have, the dependencies of the dependencies, and that it is absolutely in everyone's environment. So over to you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, he brings up a couple excellent points, which I'll pull the thread on here in just a minute, if you will. First off, I want to point out GitLab is founded in open source, right? That's where we got our start, and the reason we can grow today and to the point where we are and have a product with such depth and breadth is by our motto: anyone can contribute. So we definitely believe in that. I think as a company, though, we put a lot of control around as people contribute, what gets actually into the product and gets out. So that's a key feature, and that's something you need to look for in open source products. Is anybody just contributing and nobody's keeping an eye on it? So that can be a major problem. He also brought up an interesting point about a bill of material and knowing what your developers are doing, and we at GitLab believe that that's really key. So we've got those capabilities in the product, so you can at any time access a bill of materials and see everything that's in that project and what's being used. But then I'll bring that back to the security, Dave, and scanning and having dependency scanners built in that can go out and tell you not only what's being used, but they'll scan them for vulnerabilities as well, and software license management. So people are going to use open source or FOSS, FOSS software. It's only natural. But in the DoD, a lot of that's restricted. So having a way of managing that, sensing it, managing it, and either red flagging it or okaying it, I think are some key aspects. Again, all about that speed to mission. If we know the software, we know it's vulnerability free, or we've scanned it, let's keep going.
Yeah. So of course I'm gonna again not trying to call out GitLab at all, but I think software is so complex, definitely including open source software, where we had a discussion yesterday with kind of facilitated by Lockheed Martin Aero with a bunch of their suppliers, and pretty much the approach that these cyber experts in the DoD are taking is, hey, we're going in with two assumptions. One, that bad actors are going to get into our system, and two, that our software has vulnerabilities. So again, for some of those vulnerabilities, RunSafe, known and unknown, because I think scanning has its limits, even in the best of cases. RunSafe is going to apply an automated solution, a proactive solution rather than reactive. Waking up and finding your Apache web server has a critical vulnerability and such. So again, that's some of how, in addition to what you said of having the bill of materials, of having a more curated open source, again, a proactive approach to recognizing those vulnerabilities are there, and sometimes those vulnerabilities, aren't known. I mean, that's where 0 days come from.
Dave, if I could just jump back in real fast. That's an excellent point, and we can do all the security scanning we want while the code's being built and developed and released. But it is that runtime aspect that it's a proactive and an active approach that needs to be married, and that's why we're partners.
Yeah, it's a layered approach to security. There isn't a silver bullet, and the goal is not a trusted system. It's rather a harder than this is sort of like how do you outrun a bear? Just find someone who's slower than you are, kind of thing. Just get the attacker focused somewhere else. But Andi, I want to let you jump in if you have any thoughts or comments about Nicolas's answer while playing chess, that yes, open source is there, and sometimes people don't even know how much open source is in their infrastructure.
No, absolutely, sir. Yeah, and I concur to both of your comments as well as Nick's comments, right? I mean, open source community and majority of the DevSecOps products, which is roughly somewhere between 290 to 320 products, right? That primarily have derived from open source community and open source platform developments, right? So yeah, I mean, if we look at platform strategies from Terraform and Vault and Console from HashiCorp to any one of the products within, right, the DevSecOps from the CI, CD, CM, so completely concur with you guys, right? That security plays a key aspect in open source community products, and the development continues on the open source side, right? And sometimes it does, sort of supersede some of the OEM products that are out there. So yeah, addressing to the security and the challenges and how we overcome them and how RunSafe does it actually today is certainly a key aspect, right? That people do need to understand the value proposition. That there are vulnerabilities there, but there are ways to protect it as well, sir.
Yep, and it's going to take a layered approach.
Absolutely.
No silver bullet. Having that curated open source, having that bill of materials, and in the case RunSafe and others, taking advantage of automated, proactive approaches. Hey Jeff, we've got our third and final poll. So if you can launch that, that'd be awesome. Again, we've seeded the answer, but let's see what folks on the webinar say.
You got it, Dave. Poll question number 3 coming up. I'm launching the poll now. Again, we'll give everybody about 30 seconds to answer.
Oh, and while people are answering, for those chess players on the call, you might have noticed Nicholas's username in whatever online chess is Nico SDC. So Nikos DC. So any chess players out there want to challenge him, good luck, and that's his username.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Looks like everybody who wants to vote has voted.
Yeah,
Share the results.
and again, this result is consistent with the discussion we've having, and I think consistent with a really matured kind of approach to security in the DoD community for sure, which is that vulnerabilities are out there, even in systems that have been through RMF and ATO, that kind of on the theme that compliance is not security, that vulnerabilities are out there, and approaches are needed to sometimes reactive, such as patching, but sometimes proactive when you can. I don't know if Joe, you have comments that you want to pile on.
No, I think that that's the response that I was really hoping to see, because we should always be concerned about vulnerabilities. I think it's like anything else. How was it said? There's nothing wrong with being afraid. It's not letting the fear overtake you, right? So being extremely concerned about vulnerabilities is absolutely the right posture. If it's to the point where it's slowing us down and jeopardizing the mission, then maybe we have another problem that we have to think about, whether it's just bad tooling or what have you. But spot on. Thank you.
Cool. And Joe, I saw you put your email in the chat for anyone who wants to reach out. I'm adding my email, and I'll also add your email, Andi. It's A Patel, but what is it? It's just Jasper Solutions spelled out?
At Jasper Solutions.
Yes, Jasper Solutions, all one word with S at the end.
Again, now you've got the emails for your 3 panelists. So we've had the 3 polls. We've had 2 chess matches. Nicholas dominated both of them. We're in the final minutes, and I just love some comments or questions from the participants. As some of you are starting your DevSecOps journey, some of you are on it. Everyone's worried about vulnerabilities in open source. Everyone's worried about the tension between, or a lot of people worried about the tension between security and speed. Again, really an opportunity to bring up a point that's helping you or to ask a question for us or for other people in the webinar. So let's give it some time. Well, while maybe we're getting a question or two as we wrap up, I've gotten a lot out of kind of talking to you, Joe, as GitLab providing an entire tool chain, and to you, Andi, helping customers really launch their DevSecOps and what it takes to have scale and have speed and have security. I mean, those are 3 very massive areas that are all complex and challenges. So I think maybe over to you, Joe, for any final comments before we, and then to Andi before we wrap.
No, I just want to say thank you to everybody that participated on the call today, as well as our you and Andi, Dave. Really appreciate your time. Time is valuable. Time is money, and I hope you found this session valuable. Feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we'll definitely be happy to assist any way we can.
Great, Andi. Any final comments?
No, truly thank you for all the attendees who attended today. And if there are any questions, we'll be more than happy to address them. And again, thanks for making us part of this, Dave.
It's great to be on a webinar with you guys. And again, thanks for everyone who listened in. Thanks to our winner of a RunSafe coffee mug for asking the first question. Again, as Andi said, you have our contact info. Look forward to telling you more about what we're doing or answering any questions. But with that, I'm going to end the webinar. This is our RunSafe's third bash webinar during CyberWeek. 2 more to go, one on Thursday, one on Friday. Register for those either through the CyberWeek portal or through our website. You can just go under the blog section. You'll see links to that. So thanks, everyone. We'll leave it there. Have great days.
Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.